during Sabbath school, right? What is the main thing that we talk about? We talk about a great what? Controversy. And what is the controversy? How did it start? Who was being accused? God. God's still being accused. You jumped all the way to Revelation 20, the saints, and judgment was given to them, right? You get to figure it out. When you get to heaven, you're going to have a real family problem. And you're going to have that family problem with God because you're going to get to heaven, and if somebody did something terrible in this life that was close to you, and you get to heaven and they're there, who are you going to have a problem with? If you get to heaven and somebody that you thought was supposed to be there that was near and dear to you, who are you, and they're not there, who are you going to have a problem with? Oh, for sure. Every time. And God doesn't do a very good job of defending himself. Why? Because he's bound by something called freedom of choice. Even though he has unlimited power, he's bound by that freedom of choice. And freedom of choice has a fun little spectrum and plethora of little choices that have cascading little choices. I think in time theory, it's called the butterfly effect. Right? It's crazy. This is another thing that's crazy, okay? When we look at this story, sometimes we kind of, we think, wow, what an amazing story. Oh, well, they were just really connected with God. I don't know. What was their connection with God? Did they have phones that have access to Bibles and multiple versions of the Bible? Did everybody know how to read and write? How much of the biblical story was available to this family? Right, but let's do some counting. How many stories do they have? You have the story of the fall. What else do you have? You have the brothers and kill each other. You have the flood. Then you have the Tower of Babel. What do you have after that? Some, depending which scholar you talk to, it might be Job, because, Job kind of comes in between that, but let's not count that. All right? Babel, and then what do you have? We have great-granddaddy's story, we have granddaddy's story, and we have daddy's story. Right? So Joseph is a teenager who has 7 stories on his belt to make moral decisions about everything else that they see around them. There's no 10 Commandments. There's a really, really bad cookie mixture. It's bad. It's super bad. Right? Supposedly it's supposed to be intuitive. Oh, we're eyeballing this, right? But Joseph manages to stay faithful to God with 6, and depending who you talk to, 7 stories to his name about God. Not everybody's in agreement of what that is. There are no books about it. And there is real problems in this family. Yosef, right? Not the way it's traditionally translated, but I like it this way. It literally means God gives more. So let's just take a little look at how much more David had received. Okay? Because you'll be like scratching your head once we do the little walkthrough through what God had given more. Alright? Story basically starts, or at least the dysfunction of the story starts with his great-grandfather. It's not on this list. But his great-grandfather had a tough time hiding his super beautiful great-grandmother, who happened to be his stepsister / half-sister. Right? So, honesty was a problem. Has a son, probably at 100 years old, the son of promise. He had listened to the half-sister and married some lady, because he was like, well, maybe God's asking you to fulfill the prophecy by sleeping with my friend over here. Right? Terrible dysfunction family. So it's layered. It gets passed down. If you engage in dysfunction, if you engage in going outside of God's models, it permeates down the hill. Both of his grandparents had favorite kids. Parents here, should you have favorite kids and let the kids know about it? Brianna, you're saying yeah? All right, I wish you the best. I wish you the best. No way. Yeah, kids ask me all the time, who's your favorite, Julian or Kay? I was like, are you insane? I think you're not well. Why would you ever ask me that? I am worried about them equally. That's how I answer. It should be more optimistic. No, I love them very much. I love them very much. I don't know what I would do without them in my life, in our lives, right? But his grandparents had favorite kids, and they were sneaky about it. So his entire story is just framed on the fact that his mom and his grandma and his dad decided to do a, small batch action play in front of their handicapped grandfather, right? That led to an incredible battle for, and I'm not kidding, okay, multi-million dollars worth of inheritance. So there was a lot to fight for. And because of this, his father became an immigrant, and they continued to be an immigrant his entire life. His father goes up to Haran, where his great uncle is living, who also likes to lie, right? You know what happened to Jacob. Can you imagine? You get them super trashed on their wedding night, and then you do a bait and switch with the wives. Wedding night, the guy wakes up the next morning and he's like, whoa, I consummated with the wrong person. And he's like, well, it's custom around here for the oldest daughter to, but if you want, because he had already signed the dotted lines, he's like, I'm going to give you 7 years, and then he worked 7 more years for the one he really loved. It's crazy. It's crazy. Finally gets married with them, 14 years goes by, they're competing for his attention, they're competing for his attention. Girls didn't get to go to university, they didn't get to go to college, so what was the only self-actualizing thing that girls could do? Giving birth, right? In any way, shape, or form. Yeah, just giving offspring. It was crazy. So they're competing about that. They're doing weird little juju magic things. Ooh, we'll see if I'm fertile. Then they started giving their it's like, well, it's not working with me, so here's my assistant. You want to try with her? That's crazy. That's crazy. So he's born in his great-uncle's place. He has 11 siblings at birth because all of the moms are competing with each other. I've had students from Eastern and Central Africa with 3 different moms because over there polygamy is still a thing, even today. And my students, the students that had to go through that, man, they hate their dads. Oh my goodness, if their mom is not the favorite mom, the anger, the frustration, the inability to see God as a benevolent, loving God and as a heavenly Father. It's hard. They're handicapped. They're hamstrung. So 4 different women answered to mom. Can you imagine that? And the children, by default, are in competition with each other. Well, you think, this is my mom, this is this, and I do this with my mom, and I'm going to get the inheritance, and I'm going to get this, and I'm going to get that. His first contact with his cousins was a nightmare. He literally thought, everybody thought, because his dad said, guys, we're going to split the group, we're going to send the women and the children to the front, so just in case my brother comes, and gets one of the groups survives. He wrestles with God at night, and he literally thinks his cousins are coming to murder him and his entire family. When he finally leaves his uncle's place, who, by the way, chases them down as if they're going to murder them, right? Go read it. Go read it again. So I put the text there, and you can go and highlight it, maybe make notes, take a picture, and just go check it out for yourself. Are you disturbed so far? Amen. You should be. How do you become a functional adult dealing with this today? How are you okay looking at a family structure dealing with this today? We keep talking about families at war and the family structure is under attack, and we forget that in the Bible, there was what? A complete discompensation of what family actually traditionally means. The concept of the nuclear family is a luxury that we have come up with in the last century and a half. It has never existed that way. The conventional wedding that we all idolize and sometimes romanticize, that was something that was reserved for aristocrats and really only came in to being in the Victorian era as a kind of standards for the rich people. Most of the time, at least in the Middle Ages when people got married, it was like, hey, we need workers on the ground. Let's produce some workers. Right? That's what it was. You got to survive. Infancy mortality rate was stratospherically high. And it wasn't the same thing over here. So if you had God's blessings, your kid might survive. It was crazy. His mom dies giving birth to his little brother. He is 14 when his mom dies. 11 years old when his mom dies. 14 by the time we get to a particular other story by the end of this list. To make matters worse, his mom is the favorite mom, and at the same time his grandfather dies the same year. Jacob's already, his dad's already super discouraged and depressed. He's looking at the 20 years he had to put in, and he's like, I'm probably paying the price because I deceived my father and stole the blessing. I'm paying for it. It was very karmic in nature, right? If you do this, then you get this. Sound familiar? We still think that. How many of you are still doing things in terms of what you're going to do in the future, how you look at hard work, how you look at what energy and input you put into your life because you want to do your parents proud? Some of you know. Some of you are like, man, I'm glad I'm way better than my parents. I'm glad I'm not like my parents. We're all a cacophony of, and I'm using fancy words, kids, and I don't want to lose the kids, we're all a crazy, weird cookie mixture of all the terrible things that have happened to us, better known as trauma. That's what we are. That's what's sitting in this room right now. Just a fun cookie mix, unmeasured cookie mix of trauma. And we come in, and we come into church, and it's like, oh, hi, how are you? How's it going? Oh, how's it been going? Great. Right? It's hard. I'm fourth generation pastor's kid. There was time where things were going on, and then we were going to church, and immediately the face has to change. You are the child of so-and-so. Why do you think pastor's kids turn out like pastor's kids? Oh my goodness. You are the child of so-and-so. Act like it. Operating word, act. Not be, act. So his dad is clinically depressed. Life is no longer worth living. Everything I ever wanted, I fell in love. Falling in love was a luxury in those days. Falling in love is a luxury of the last 2 centuries, I would say, despite what Shakespeare may have told you. Okay? By the way, it's called a tragedy for a reason, right? His brother jumped at the opportunity. Oh, dad's a little clinically depressed. I guess somebody has to step in. All of his brothers, those older brothers, are between 7 to 10 years older than him. So, he's 14 years old, and at around 24 years old, his oldest brother goes and starts sleeping with one of his stepmoms. Because it probably is going to get me some sort of sway. Dad's kind of dropping the ball. Maybe I can step into this role. He's 24, his brother's 14. As teenagers or early young adults, okay? Their sister gets abused. The real word is another one, right? And the brothers are like, okay, well, we have this custom, God told us to do it, even though they could care less about anything else, because you get to Genesis 35, and there's idol worship rampant in the house. They could care less. They said to the guys that did that to their sisters, like, well, you have to become part of our family, so there's a small outpatient surgery you should all perform, so that you could all, and while they're sore, they go, 2 of them, Simeon and Levi, and kill the entire town. They wipe out all the men. Oh, you did that to our sister? All right. Ruth's like, well, I really love her. I want to marry her. Oh, there's provisions for that in the Old Testament, in Leviticus, and in Deuteronomy. Yeah. It's in there. It's hard. And the brothers are like basically mass murderers, thieves, and pillagers by the ages of probably 18 to 21. Those are his brothers. And they're shepherds. By the time Jesus' day comes around, a shepherd's testimony was inadmissible in court because of how bad the reputation was of a shepherd. The shepherd was the lowest form of employment you could have. That's why David didn't get called up with his brothers. Oh, he's just a shepherd. I want you to really look at who God works with. And every single one of these brothers, every single one of these people became a tribe of the people of God. Do not ever doubt how much God thinks of you. No matter what has happened, no matter what has happened in your family, in your life, how God looks at you. And his dad didn't learn from his parents' mistakes and had favorites. Have you ever seen somebody that you're like, wow, you went through a really tough time? Wow, they're aware that they went through a really tough time. And then they go and they pick a situation and put themselves in exactly the same situation again. And you see them and you're like, wow, this is a rational, logical adult. Why in the world would they do that? Have you ever seen somebody go from abusive relationship to abusive relationship? Have you ever seen yourself, if you're a parent, say, I will never do or say what my parents said? And then I'm like, I gotta hold my thing and be like, and I slap myself. I was like, oh no, I just said what my dad used to say. No, I can't believe that. It's my house. You're gonna do. When you grew up, you'll understand better. It's tough. Some of you are laughing, some of you are like nervously laughing, and some of you are really laughing, and it's okay. It's in between. There's a lot of hurt in this room. And I try to pair it with seriousness and funniness. But the Bible is, and believe me, Fred knows, I'm obsessed with finding funny. Right? I have a file in my head of what to make fun of. Right? And it's not okay. The Bible is not full of humor. It's full of some crazy things. Why? Because God gives more. Did God give more? I mean, we know how the story ends. So yes, God did give more. But can you imagine being 14, 17 years old, and this is your life? So we have to ask ourselves a little bit about this Joseph character. Right? Because his father shows favoritism by doing what? He gives him, and this is what we tell in the story. And Joseph had this cool Technicolor, amazing color coat. Yay! Right? Amazing. So many colors. He was wearing a Tesla. No, that's how much it was worth. He was wearing a Tesla. His dad gave him a Tesla to wear. That's how much his clothes were worth. And he's walking around. He doesn't have to do shepherding. He doesn't have to do farming. He doesn't have calloused hands. He just stays at home. Just like his mom, like Jacob's mom, kept Jacob at home. I am learning so many things. This life is wonderful. The sunshine is shining. And God is good to all of us. And his brother's like, one day, when they're not watching, I'm going to shank this dude. Right? Right? They're really thinking this. Because they're realizing their father is going to omit 10 of them, and his entire multi-million, and we're talking about $250 million worth, is going to go to this boy. Can you imagine the rage? And then God reveals to him some incredible dreams. Guys, I was dreaming last night, and God, I'm just so touched. God is talking to me, and I just want to let you guys know that God is so good. He gives us dreams. And in my dream, it's just so weird. You know, we were gathering crops like we usually do, and everybody had their sheaves. And all of a sudden, your sheaves just started bowing down to mine. Weird. Isn't that weird? That's weird, right? That's crazy. And the brothers are like, because he's probably saying this, you know, families were big, you all ate in the same tent, you were probably sitting or laying down on the floor and dipping in the same sauces, just like Jesus was, and they're like, you know, they're looking around and they're like, can you believe this guy? Can you believe this guy? My goodness, when we get a chance, we are going to bury this dude, okay? He's never gotten spanked. He's never gotten, you know, any sort of discipline. He's this favorite. And they probably got what? All sorts of yelling. It's like, how you killed a bunch of people. We have to quarantine us. Like, now everybody hates us, all our neighbors. Like, I did everything I could. I gave away a bunch of money so that those people wouldn't come back and fight us. Like, are you serious? What's wrong with you guys, right? And Joseph and his little brother. So, when you read Ellen White, she says that his heart was pure. I can't find that in the Bible, right? So you have to ask yourself some questions. Was he naive? Was he spoiled? Do you think he was spoiled? Yes. For sure. We can establish that. I don't know if he was naive or not. Because when I keep reading the story, it seems like he was very intelligent. Right? So, can you be intelligent and naive? Yes, you can. Okay? We know he's a snitch, right? Because you read Genesis 37, and it says that his entire job was to go look at what his brothers were doing, and then bring back a report to his dad. Dad, you know what I saw them doing? I went over there, and they were talking bad to those people. And I don't know why. I tried to tell them that it was not the right thing to do. But they kept doing it. Right? Also, it also says that he was attractive. There's very few guys in the Bible. Also, I did research on this. It only talks about people's appearances in the Old Testament. Nobody's called attractive or disgusting or whatever outside of the Old Testament. In the New Testament, it's just like, hey, we got to get things done, right? We're not going to waste time on what people look like, right? In the Old Testament, it's like, oh, handsome, of rugged features, pleasant to look at. Right? Who are the people that were pleasant to look at? Joseph, David, Saul, Absalom. No. In fact, Samson, sidebar, it nowhere says that he was like, you know, shredded. We always think he's shredded, but that was the whole thing. The Spirit of God would fill him, and it's basically the skinny guy that all of a sudden is like, yeah! you know? Right? Like, he goes Super Saiyan, for those of you that know what that is. Yeah, Christopher knows. Yeah. Okay? No, that was the crazy thing. Samson, you wouldn't have picked him apart, and he wasn't necessarily a good-looking dude. In fact, he had way too long hair, right? And he brought a skinny dude with long hair that beat up people. It's weird. It's weird. It's really weird. So no, he's one of the few people that is called attractive. We're going to get to that in 2 sermons. And pray for me because I'm trying to make sure that 10-year-olds can understand everything I'm talking about sometimes. So if you have feedback and you tell me, John, you went too far with some of the details, first of all, I'm going to answer, thank you. I will try to do better, but it's in the Bible. Okay? So that's what I'm going to say. But I will listen because I want to be teachable. But the Bible is what? It's very graphic. It's extremely graphic. Okay? So, and then, you know, and I do realize that not everybody has been exposed to the same kind of media. Okay, the area where they lived at and traveled through is here. I mapped it out. I have this cool little map program. And this is how big it is. So one day, he's 17 years old, and his dad tells him, hey, we're in Shechem, we're in Hebron, and I want you to go and, or the other way around. No, they're in Hebron, he's in Shechem, so it's 65 miles away. So it'd be the equivalent of a 17-year-old boy going out and walking from basically Derby all the way to past Hutchinson. Okay, 65 miles. Yeah, he's walking, he gets lost, he ends up at this place called Dothan, and he's like, oh, have you seen my brothers? Oh yeah, your brothers. Yeah, we saw them. No, you gotta keep walking, like point him off like 20 more miles. He gets to the place where his brothers are at, and when I did it on TikTok, I gave them kind of like a New Jersey accent. He's like, hey, look at over there, look at that swaggy snitch coming over here. It'd be a terrible waste if something terrible were to happen to him, huh? You know what I'm saying? I don't know. No disrespect, right? So they basically gang jump him, right? He doesn't even get to them. He comes over, is like, hi guys, and they're like it was raining fists, right? This guy they rip the clothes off of him. They don't take them off, they rip everything off of him. The description in the Bible is that he probably gets tossed down the well, stark naked. We don't paint the story that way. His brothers are eating near the well. They can hear him screaming for help. They can hear him saying, help me, somebody help me. And they're just having dinner. And they're like, what are we going to do? That kind of thing. The older brother, who's racked with guilt, Reuben, he's like, guys, pump the brakes, okay? Can't do this. Just don't touch him. Just be careful. He has to go take care of something. I think they're on shifts. He goes away. By the time he comes back, they're like, hey, maybe everybody can go home happy here. But I don't understand what the rationale was, because it wasn't for money, because they ended up selling him to the Midianites, who were their distant cousins, for what would have been the equivalent of $200 today. There's nothing. It was just, let's get some chunk change. Remember, they're managing a multi-million-dollar cattle operation. I want you to understand who you're talking about, what you're seeing out here. These are young adults that are super bitter and that are looking out for their investments and their future. Based on what? Incredible, irreversible family dysfunction. Is this family at war?
Yes.
100%. And they take advantage of everything at their disposal. Reuben comes back, sees what they've done. What does he do? He rips his clothes, but still participates in the lie. I don't know about you, but if I went through that amount of trauma by age 17, my story doesn't end the same way. So let's analyze why they're able to connect and stay connected at that capacity in that way. This is what I want to focus on. Jacob's sons were jealous of their brother Joseph. Instead of sons, it said patriarchs, right, Ryan? Right? And it's an even harder hit if you talk about patriarchs. Because in Acts, this is being told to people that are hearing the message of Jesus. I want you to think about that. Jacob's, what do we call it? Patriarchs, right? Jacob's patriarchs were jealous of their brother Joseph. So they sold him as a slave. He was taken to Egypt. But God was with him. God was with him. God was with him. What is the word? What is the word for God is with us? Emmanuel. Jesus. That's the concept of Jesus. Later on, when these tribes become millions and millions of people, what's the first instruction that he gives them? Build me a house so that I can be with you. God has always wanted to be with us. We're the ones that take ourselves apart from God. Have you stopped to think about that? And it permeates to our families. And they all come back and they have a nice little corporate lie that they're all agreeing to. They're all taking blood oaths on. It's like literal blood oaths, right? Blood of this animal. They bring back the bloody Tesla, right? Give it to the dad. And the dad sinks into irreversible clinical depression. Every interaction we have with their dad, all the way up to Genesis 46, where God has to intervene and tell, physically, verbally, out loud, tell Jacob, it's okay, everything's fine. Up until then, he believes nobody about anything. Everything is darkness. Everything is depression. Everything is down. Everything is cynical. When we talk about a church family growing together and taking the message of hope to other people, we need to understand the darkness that is out there. How can they see Jesus if there's these incredible things in the way? This is where we've messed up. Church was supposed to be the place where people can bring these things and work through them with equally hurt people and see how God manifests himself by the transformation. That's essentially why I'm still a pastor. Because I get daily miraculous reminders of people who should have been a certain way and now are another way. And there is no rational explanation as to why they're giving praise to God, as to why they're staying faithful, as to why they're going forward. God is beautiful, but he is bound by our choices. He is a limitless God, bound by the family we've constructed outside of his model. So, God's plans and adjustment to our plans. Is it a chicken before the egg? Is God causing this to happen? Is God reacting to what will happen? Is God working through what will happen? Does God need this to happen? So that's the question that you got to ask yourself. 1 John 4:8 tells us, he that does not love does not know God, because God is love. And if God is love, then you only have two choices. Either he is exactly who he says he is, or he's a masochist. Because he created us knowing this would happen. How many of you would create a child knowing they would turn out to be a serial killer? God did. And I don't want any coughs about the Drake reference, okay? All right, my bad. Some people got that in the room. Somebody online will probably get it. Okay? God did. God did it. He did that. We don't love like that. We don't have that kind of patience. We don't have that kind of mercy. We don't put up with this. We don't take this gamble. We don't go that far. He does. So, what if the reason God dies on a tree is because we took from a tree? So in the end, he puts himself on a tree by doing something to fix what we did at the beginning on a tree. What if because our hands took from a tree, his hands had to be pierced on a tree? What if they nailed his feet? More specifically, in a lot of references, they say his ankles were nailed. What if they nailed his feet? Probably the ankles, because the first prophecy talks about his bruised heels. What if they stabbed his side near the same spot the woman was created from, so Eve's mistake could be remembered? What if he wore a crown of thorns as he died because he wanted to address the curse given to the ground because of sin when we fell? It's so good to be a part of the family of God. Amen. He thought of you before you were even made. He thought of you before you were, quote unquote, an accident. He thought of you every single way. There's some people that cannot see themselves as having worth because they cannot see themselves as God sees them. Amen. He loves you with a love that does not begin to compute in our head. What if? What if that's the God that we serve? So what did Jesus offer us? Something we often forget about Jesus is that he never once offered happiness to us. Go read the Gospels again. Never once does he offer happiness. The law did. The law offered happiness. If you do A, B, C, then you're going to have C, B, A. Right? That's how it was. Your land's going to be richer. Your kids are going to be happier. You're going to make more money. You're going to do all these other things. The law offers happiness. God never offered happiness. Jesus didn't. What he did offer was something the law and the people will never be able to give us: peace. We're all chasing happiness, justice, success, revenge, and even wholeness in our families, our jobs, our relationships, our goals. And what we forget is to look at what the search has left behind when humanity searches for it outside of God, and even worse, when they search for it in the name of God, disguised as something that humanity is searching. It's a trail of trash and destruction. It's massive and it's cross-generational. Why? Because happiness is all about us, or more specifically, me. That's why Jesus only pitches peace and not happiness. Look at the Sermon on the Mount. Who does he say is blessed? Which, by the way, the word is makarios, is just happy. Who does he say is happy? The poor, the meek, the sad, the hungry, the merciful, the pure, the makers of peace, and those whose lives are messed up because they are chased for doing the right things. They're persecuted. We are very confused about what it is to live this life with God hand in hand. When temptations hunt you down, I love what Auntie Ellen says here. When temptations hunt you down, when worry and confusion surround you, when you are depressed and discouraged and you feel like you're going to give up, look towards Jesus. And the darkness that surrounds you will be kicked out by how shiny his presence is. Once again, just letting you know. You can go look it up. It's in the Ministry of Healing. Here's the second part. But I changed it so that I want to make sure that kids understand this, okay? Okay? When sin fights for control of your mind and overloads your conscience, look to who? Jesus. His grace is sufficient to push away sin. Let your grateful heart turn to him, even if it is shaking with uncertainty. Grab on the hope you now have in front of you. Jesus is waiting to what? Adopt you into his family. And I did not change that. That's exactly as it is. He wants to adopt you. If your family's at war, you've got another family. If you are taken prisoner, if life has given you the rawest hand you could possibly get, remember there are stories in the Bible where people are aware of whose family they really belong to. Even if they have a basic understanding of God. Remember, how many stories does Joseph have? 6, top 7. That's it. Does that sound like something a child can understand? Does that sound like something a child can live with for the rest of their life? We overcomplicate what we can do with God's stories. In this day and age, we continue to pitch the concept from Daniel chapter 12, verse 4. And knowledge will increase and people will run to and fro. Okay, knowledge may increase a bunch, but wisdom doesn't. And here's wisdom. God must be feared. That's it. Feared from the sense that I need him in my life. And without him, I have no family. No matter what might happen with my family, no matter how good my family is, no matter how bad my family is, I have a real family. It's an amazing, amazing family. Is your family at war? 1 in 5 adults experience mental health concern in the past year. It's a fact. It's only going to keep going up because we're still doom scrolling and just riding that 10th commandment to the ground. Why? Because we keep telling ourselves, oh, this is what family is. This is what it's supposed to look like. This is what... Without God, it doesn't matter how dysfunctional your family is. God worked with this family. Do you understand what I'm saying to you?
You get to the New Jerusalem, their names are inscribed on the cornerstones of that city. Those guys! God can work with you. I don't care what your story is like. I keep adding stories to my stick. I'm telling you, God can do it. It's amazing. God's people say, God's left me. God has forgotten me. But God answers, can a mother forget a baby who is nursing in her chest? Can she stop showing her tender love to the baby who was born to her? She might forget her child, but I will not forget you. I have written your name on the palms of my hands. Your walls are never out of my sight. Are you thankful that God thinks of you like that? No matter what happens, we are here to reflect that to other people. It's going to be an uphill climb. There's a lot of hurt people in this room. I don't know why. I don't have all the stories, but God does. And He will never leave you. He will never forsake you. Next time, we're going to continue talking about family of war. And we're going to talk about family dysfunction 101. Probably one of the most graphic stories in the Bible. But I'm here to tell you, God is talking to your heart. Let's sing together.